poor single dad took in a strange pregnant girl for one night, unaware she's a billionaire's heiress. Before we continue, please tell us, where in the world are you tuning in from? We love seeing how far our stories travel. The rain hammered against the cracked windshield like bullets from the sky. Daniel Morrison squinted through the downpour, his calloused hands gripping the steering wheel of his 15-year-old pickup truck. After 12 hours of construction work, his back ached and his clothes smelled of sawdust and sweat. As his headlights swept across the small park near his modest neighborhood, something made him pump the brakes. There, hunched on the bench beneath the broken streetlight, sat a young woman. Even through the rain-streaked window, he could see she was pregnant, her arms wrapped protectively around her belly as the downpour soaked through what looked like expensive clothes. Daniel's first instinct was to drive on. He was already late. Mrs. Kowalski was watching his 7-year-old daughter, and the elderly woman needed to get home soon. But something in the girl's posture, the complete defeat in the way her shoulders shook, made him pull over. "Miss," he called out, rolling down his window despite the rain pelting his face. "Miss, are you all right?" When she looked up, he was struck by how young she appeared, maybe 22 or 23. Mascara streaked down her cheeks, though whether from tears or rain, he couldn't tell. Her designer dress, which probably cost more than his monthly rent, clung to her small frame.
"I'm fine," she said automatically, though her chattering teeth betrayed her words. Daniel glanced at his dashboard clock, 9:47 p.m. The temperature was dropping fast, and the nearest shelter was miles away. He thought of Judy, safe and warm at home, and couldn't imagine leaving someone's daughter out here like this. "Look, I don't mean to intrude," he said, grabbing the umbrella from his passenger seat, "but you're going to catch pneumonia out here. My house is right there." He pointed to the small blue house across the street. "At least come in until the rain stops." The girl hesitated, studying his face in the dim light. Later, she would tell him that in that moment, she'd been stripped of everything that usually protected her. The men who'd cornered her at the bus station 3 hours earlier had taken her wallet, her phone, even her grandmother's pearl necklace. They'd seen a vulnerable pregnant woman traveling alone and seized their opportunity. "I have a daughter," Daniel added gently as he stepped out into the rain with his umbrella. "She's 7. You'll be safe, I promise." Something in his voice, perhaps the weariness of a single parent who understood what it meant to struggle, made her nod. "Alex," she said quietly as he helped her to her feet. "My name is Alex." "Daniel, and that's a beautiful name." The walk to his house was short, but revelatory. Daniel noticed her shoes, designer heels completely ruined by the rain and utterly impractical for walking. She moved carefully, one hand supporting her belly, and he instinctively offered his arm for support. She took it without hesitation, all pretense of independence washed away with the storm.
Inside, the house was small but meticulously clean. Children's drawings covered the refrigerator and a half-finished puzzle sprawled across the coffee table. The furniture was mismatched but comfortable, each piece telling a story of garage sales and secondhand finds carefully arranged into something resembling a home.
"Daddy?"
A little voice called from the hallway. Judy appeared, rubbing sleepy eyes, her brown hair tousled from where she'd been dozing on the couch. Behind her, Mrs. Kowalski emerged, her concerned expression deepening when she saw the bedraggled stranger. "Hey, sweetheart," Daniel said softly, kneeling to Judy's level. "This is Alex. She needs our help tonight." Judy studied the stranger with the uninhibited curiosity of children. "Are you having a baby?" "Judy?" Daniel warned gently, but Alex managed her first genuine smile in weeks. "Yes, I am. A little girl." "Like me!" Judy exclaimed, her face lighting up. "Daddy says girls are brave and strong. Is your baby brave too?" Alex felt something crack open in her chest. "I hope so." Mrs. Kowalski, who had been Daniel's neighbor and unofficial grandmother to Judy since they'd moved in 3 years ago, stepped forward. "You poor dear, you're soaked to the bone. Daniel, get her some dry clothes while I make tea." What struck Alex most that first evening wasn't the modest surroundings or even the kindness of strangers. It was the warmth. Daniel made her chamomile tea without asking if she wanted it, simply pressing the warm mug into her shaking hands. The old sweatpants and oversized t-shirt he found smelled like fabric softener and something indefinably comforting. As she changed in the small bathroom, Alex caught sight of herself in the mirror. Without her makeup, designer clothes, and all the armor that came with being Arthur Whitfield's daughter, she looked like what she truly was, a scared pregnant 23-year-old who had no idea what came next.
When she emerged, hair wrapped in a towel and wearing clothes that swallowed her small frame, Daniel was in the kitchen making soup from scratch. Nothing fancy, just chicken and vegetables, but made with the practiced efficiency of someone who'd learned to cook out of necessity rather than pleasure. "You don't have to do all this," Alex said, settling carefully at the small dining table where Judy was coloring. "When's the last time you ate?" Daniel asked, without turning around. Alex realized she couldn't remember. "This morning, I think? Maybe yesterday?" Daniel's stirring became more vigorous. Well, that settles it then. As they ate dinner together, Judy chattering about school and her best friend Katie, Daniel asking gentle questions that didn't pry, the story began to come out in careful pieces. Alex spoke around the edges of her truth, painting the picture of a relationship gone wrong without revealing the crushing weight of her real identity. "There was this man, Christopher. He said he loved me, made all these promises, but it was all calculated. Every word, every gesture, every I love you was part of a plan." Daniel paused in his eating, sensing there was more to the story. "What kind of plan?" "The kind where you pretend to care about someone until you get what you need from them." Alex's voice was barely above a whisper. 7 months pregnant, and I find out through a private investigator that he knew exactly who my father was from the very beginning, had studied my routines, my vulnerabilities, my family's—" she caught herself before saying fortune, "my family's situation." "So you left," Daniel said simply.
I couldn't stay. Everyone knew. They all looked at me with such pity. Poor, naive girl, too stupid to see what was right in front of her. Alex's hand moved protectively over her belly. I just needed to get away from all of it, from the whispers and the judgment, and the feeling like I was drowning in my own life. Judy had stopped coloring, her young face serious as she processed the grown-up conversation. "My mommy went away too," she said quietly. "But she didn't want to. There was a fire." Daniel's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly, and Alex saw a flash of old pain cross his features. This was clearly not a story he told often or easily. "I'm sorry to Judy. That must have been very scary." "Daddy was brave," Judy said with absolute conviction. "He saved me from the fire, but he couldn't save Mommy. The fireman said she helped other people get out first, and then the ceiling fell down." The weight of shared loss settled over the table like a blanket. Alex looked at Daniel with new understanding. This man knew what it meant to have your world collapse in an instant. 3 years ago, Daniel said quietly, as if reading her thoughts. Faulty wiring in the apartment building. Rachel was visiting our neighbor, Mrs. Chen, who was sick with the flu. When the fire started in the basement, Rachel made sure Mrs. Chen and her kids got out safely. By the time she tried to leave, the stairwell was gone. "She was a hero," Alex said softly. "She was. And Judy has her mother's heart, always wanting to help everyone." Alex felt tears sting her eyes. Here was a man who had lost everything that mattered and still had room in his home and heart for a stranger in need. The contrast with her own world, where kindness often came with price tags and ulterior motives, was stark. That night, Daniel insisted she take his bed while he slept on the couch. Alex protested, but he wouldn't hear it. "You're growing a human," he said, with a gentle smile that transformed his tired face. "That trumps everything else." Lying in Daniel's bed, surrounded by the simple comforts of his modest room, Alex made 2 phone calls. The first was to her father. Arthur Whitfield answered on the first ring, his voice hoarse with sleeplessness. "Alexandra." "Daddy," she whispered, and then the tears came for the first time since the bus station. "I'm safe. I'm okay." "Where are you? I'll send the car immediately, the plane if you're far."
"No," she said firmly, surprising herself with the strength in her voice. "Not yet. I'm somewhere safe, with good people. I need a few more days, please." There was a long pause. Arthur Whitfield was not a man accustomed to waiting, to not being in control. But something in her daughter's voice, a clarity he hadn't heard in months, made him relent. "Are you hurt? The baby?" "We're both fine. I'm in Cedar Falls, Iowa. I'm staying with a family, a good family. I promise I'm safe." "Cedar Falls," he repeated, and she could hear him writing it down, knew he'd have his security team verify everything within the hour. "Alexandra, what happened at the bus station? Your credit cards were used there, then nothing." "I was robbed, but I'm okay now. These people, they don't know who I am, Daddy. They're just helping because it's the right thing to do." Another pause. In the background, Alex could hear the familiar sounds of her father's study, the grandfather clock that had belonged to her great-grandfather, the rustle of papers from whatever crisis he was managing, even at this late hour. "Call me every day. Promise me." "I promise." "I love you, sweetheart, more than all the money in the world." "I love you too, Daddy."
The second call was to her own voicemail, to hear Christopher's increasingly frantic messages. "Alex, baby, where are you? Your father's people came to my apartment. There's been some kind of misunderstanding. Call me back." Then anger. "This is ridiculous, Alex. Whatever they told you, you know I love you." Finally, desperation. "I can explain everything. Just give me a chance." Alex deleted every message without listening to them fully. Some chapters of your life, she realized, deserved to be closed without ceremony. The next few days fell into a rhythm that felt both foreign and natural to Alex. She would wake to the sound of Daniel quietly getting ready for work in the pre-dawn darkness, always leaving a note with Mrs. Kowalski's phone number and a few dollars just in case you need anything. During the days, Alex helped around the house, learning to navigate a world without household staff or unlimited credit. She burned the first grilled cheese she attempted to make for Judy's lunch, setting off the smoke detector and sending them both into giggles. "Daddy uses low heat," Judy explained patiently, showing Alex how to butter the bread and wait for the perfect golden color. "He says good things take time." They made cookies from a box mix, played board games with missing pieces, and Alex found herself reading bedtime stories with different voices for each character. Judy would dissolve into giggles when Alex made the dragon sound like a sophisticated British gentleman or the princess talked like a pirate. "You're funny," Alex announced one afternoon as they sat on the living room floor working on the perpetual puzzle. "Not scary funny like the clowns at birthday parties, good funny." "Thank you," Alex said, genuinely touched. That might be the best compliment I've ever received. In the evenings, after Judy was asleep, Daniel and Alex would sit on the small front porch, despite the October chill, wrapped in blankets and sharing stories. These conversations became the anchor of Alex's days. Real conversations, not the carefully orchestrated exchanges of her usual world. Daniel told her about his dreams of opening a small hardware store, of the house he and Rachel had planned to buy before the fire changed everything. She wanted a big kitchen, he said, staring out at the quiet street. Said that was where families really happened, not in fancy dining rooms, but around a kitchen table where kids could do homework while dinner cooked. Alex told him about her mother. "She died when I was 15, she shared one evening. Not from anything dramatic, just an allergic reaction to medication nobody knew about. One minute she was there, the next she wasn't. I think that's when my father started working all the time. It was easier than being in that empty house, remembering what we'd lost." Grief hits everyone differently. Some people run towards it, some people run away. Sounds like your father chose distance as his coping mechanism. "He tries now," I admitted. After the Christopher situation, he actually said, "I love you" first, for once, instead of waiting for me to say it. But sometimes trying feels like admitting all the times you didn't before.
on a fifth night, as Daniel was showing her how to patch a small hole in one of Judy's school shirts. Their hands brushed over the fabric. The moment stretched between them, heavy with possibility and unspoken feelings. But Daniel pulled back, respectful of her vulnerability and aware of the complicated nature of her situation. "You're going back," he said. It wasn't a question. "I have to," Alex replied, setting down the needle. "This baby deserves better than a mother who's hiding from her life."
She took a deep breath, knowing it was time for the truth. "Daniel, I need to tell you something. My last name isn't really Smith. It's Whitfield. My father is Arthur Whitfield." Daniel's face remained blank. The name clearly meant nothing to him, which somehow made Alex's heart ache with gratitude. "He owns Whitfield Industries. We have money, a significant amount of it, the kind that gets you in newspapers and magazines." She watched his face for any change, any flicker of recognition or greed or calculation. "I didn't tell you because you treated me like a person. Just Alex, not an heiress or a news story or an opportunity, just me." Daniel was quiet for a long moment, processing this information. Finally, a slight smile tugged at his lips. "That explains the shoes, and why you looked at the can opener like it was some kind of alien technology. Are you angry that I lied?" "Why would I be angry?" He seemed genuinely puzzled. "You needed help. Would it have mattered if you were rich or poor? Hungry is hungry. Scared is scared. Pregnant and alone is pregnant and alone, regardless of your bank account." Alex felt something inside her chest expand and settle simultaneously. To most people, yes, it would matter. A lot. "Well," Daniel said, picking up the sewing again, "I'm not most people, and neither are you, apparently. Money doesn't change the fact that you make Judy laugh, or that you've been helping around here without being asked, or that you're one of the strongest people I've ever met." "Strong?" Alex laughed, but there was no humor in it. "I fell for a con artist, got robbed at a bus station, and have been hiding at a stranger's house for a week. You left a life that was hurting you, even though it would have been easier to stay. You're protecting your child by making hard choices. You're learning to do things you've never had to do before, and you're doing them with grace. That's not weakness, Alex. That's courage." That night, Alex called her father again. This time, she told him everything. About Daniel, about Judy, about the week that had given her back to herself. "I'm ready to come home," she said, "but I want you to meet them first. Not because I need your approval, but because they've become important to me, and I hope they always will be." "This Daniel," Arthur said carefully, "you care about him." "I do, and he cares about me. Not Arthur Whitfield's daughter, not the Whitfield heir, just me. When's the last time you think that happened?" Arthur was quiet for a long moment. "I'll be there tomorrow," he said finally. "And, Alexandra, I'm proud of you, for leaving when you needed to, for staying when it mattered, and for knowing the difference." The black town car appeared outside Daniel's house the next morning like something from another world. Neighbors peeked out windows, curious about the expensive vehicle sitting on their modest street. Daniel stood at his kitchen window, watching the silver-haired man in the $1,000 suit step onto his cracked driveway. Alex had told him everything the night before, but seeing Arthur Whitfield in person, even having Googled him after Alex's confession, was still surreal. This was one of America's wealthiest men, and he was about to walk into Daniel's small house with its second-hand furniture and carefully managed budget. When Daniel opened the door, Arthur's eyes weren't on the shabby surroundings. They were on his daughter, standing behind this construction worker in borrowed clothes, looking more at peace than she had in months. "You're Daniel," Arthur said, extending his hand. It wasn't a question. Alex had clearly told him everything. The handshake was firm, measuring. Two fathers taking the measure of each other. "Mr. Whitfield," Daniel replied, evenly, neither intimidated nor fawning.
"Thank you," Arthur said simply, but his eyes conveyed everything his reserved nature wouldn't let him say out loud. "You gave her what I couldn't. Normalcy, dignity, the space to remember who she is beyond my name and my money." "She's been a help around here," Daniel said. "Judy's going to miss her something fierce." Arthur studied the younger man, this construction worker who hadn't asked for anything despite now knowing exactly who he was dealing with. "Alex tells me you didn't know who she was until yesterday." "Wouldn't have changed anything if I had," Daniel said simply. And Arthur believed him. In 40 years of building an empire, he'd developed an instinct for reading people, for sensing agenda and calculation. This man had none of that. He was exactly what he appeared to be, a good father doing right by a stranger because it was the right thing to do. "Daddy!" Judy burst into the living room, stopping short when she saw the imposing stranger in the expensive suit. "Oh, hi." "Judy," Alex said gently, "this is my father, the one I told you about." Arthur knelt to Judy's level, his stern features softening. "You must be Judy. Alex has told me so much about you. She says you're an excellent teacher. I taught her how to make grilled cheese without burning it, and how to do the puzzle without forcing the pieces." "Very important skills," Arthur said seriously. "Thank you for taking such good care of my daughter." Over coffee, Arthur accepting the simple kitchen table with the same grace he might show at a boardroom meeting, the conversation flowed with surprising ease. Arthur asked Daniel about his work, about Judy's school, about their life in Cedar Falls. Not with the polite distance of class difference, but with genuine interest.
"Alex tells me you're a widower," Arthur said quietly when Judy had wandered off to get her latest art project. 3 years now, Daniel confirmed. House fire. My wife, she was helping neighbors evacuate when the building collapsed. Arthur's expression grew solemn. "I lost my wife too. Cancer. Alex was 15. I'm afraid I didn't handle it as well as you seem to have done. There's no right way to handle losing someone. You just survive it and try to do right by the people who are still here." Arthur glanced toward Alex, who was helping Judy arrange her drawings for display. "You've done well with your daughter, and with mine this past week. Your daughter is remarkable, stronger than she knows, kinder than she's been taught to believe is safe." "Yes," Arthur said quietly. "She gets that from her mother." Before she left, Alex knelt down to hug Judy goodbye. "Take care of your daddy," she whispered. "Will you come back?" Judy asked, her young face serious. Alex looked at Daniel over Judy's head, something unspoken passing between them. "Maybe. I hope so," Judy said, with 7-year-old certainty. "You fit here." Those 3 words, "you fit here," would echo in Alex's mind for weeks to come. Arthur shook Daniel's hand again, longer this time. "She told me what happened. About Christopher, about being robbed, about ending up on that bench. In her whole life, she's never had someone help her without wanting something in return. Thank you for giving her that. She didn't need help finding her strength. She just needed a safe place to remember she had it." Arthur studied him one last time. "You know she's going to want to see you again." "I hope so," Daniel said honestly. "And you know what that would mean? The attention, the speculation, the complexity of being involved with my family." Daniel's steady brown eyes met Arthur's sharp blue ones. "All I know is that your daughter is the strongest, kindest, most genuine person I've ever met. Everything else is just details."
Arthur smiled, really smiled, for the first time since arriving. Good answer. 3 months later, Alexandra Whitfield gave birth to a daughter she named Hope. The private hospital suite resembled a luxury hotel more than a medical facility, but among her first visitors were Daniel and Judy, looking adorably out of place among the opulent surroundings. "She's so tiny," Judy whispered, peering into the bassinet with wide eyes. "Is she okay being so small?" "She's perfect," Alex said, her voice soft with exhaustion and joy. "Would you like to hold her?" With Daniel's help, Judy carefully cradled baby Hope, her young face serious with the responsibility. "Hi, baby Hope. I'm Judy. I'm going to teach you lots of stuff when you're bigger, like how to make grilled cheese and do puzzles and read stories with funny voices." Arthur watched from his position near the window, this billionaire grandfather with tears in his eyes as he observed his granddaughter being welcomed by this unlikely extended family. When Daniel approached him, Arthur extended his hand once again. She told me everything, Arthur said quietly, about these past months, about how you've stayed in touch, how carefully you've both navigated this, how you've made her laugh again. She deserves to laugh, Daniel said simply. Yes, she does. Arthur studied Daniel's face. You know there will be challenges, media attention, people questioning your motives, the complicated dynamics of wealth and class. There will also be morning coffee and bedtime stories and teaching kids to ride bicycles. Daniel replied, I've learned that what matters happens in the quiet moments, not in the headlines. Arthur nodded slowly. My daughter is lucky to have found you, and I think you're lucky to have found her too. I think you're right.
Over the following months, what started as rescue evolved into something deeper and more complex. Alex would drive out to Cedar Falls in increasingly modest cars, trying to blend into Daniel's neighborhood. She'd bring expensive toys that Judy would play with once before returning to her beloved stuffed rabbit. She'd bring gourmet ingredients that Daniel would gamely attempt to cook, usually ending in laughter and ordering pizza. Daniel, in turn, introduced Alex to a world she'd never known. The satisfaction of a job well done with your hands, the community of neighbors who looked out for each other, the peace of Sunday mornings with no agenda beyond pancakes and cartoons. You're learning to live small, Mrs. Kowalski observed one afternoon as Alex helped her tend her small garden while baby Hope napped in the shade. I'm learning to live real, Alex corrected. I never knew the difference before. Arthur watched this courtship, because that's what it was, though neither Daniel nor Alex rushed to define it, with surprising approval. He'd had Daniel investigated, of course, but found exactly what he'd expected. A man who'd never missed a day of work, who turned down promotions that would have meant less time with Judy, who still visited his wife's grave every Sunday with flowers from the grocery store. He's not after your money, Arthur told his daughter one evening as they sat in his study, baby Hope sleeping between them. I know. He's after me. The real me. The one who burns dinner and can't figure out the washing machine and cries at animated movies. And you? Arthur asked. Alex smiled, thinking of Daniel's laugh lines earned through joy and sorrow both, of his gentle hands teaching Judy to tie her shoes, of the way he'd given her dignity when she had none left. I'm after the same thing, she said. The real him. The man who makes soup from scratch when someone's hungry, who reads bedtime stories in different voices, who believes that kindness is never wasted even when it costs you something.
They married 2 years later in the park where they'd first met. Daniel had arranged for the old bench to be restored and had a small plaque installed that read, Sometimes the best things in life begin in the rain. Arthur walked his daughter down a makeshift aisle, past construction workers from Daniel's crew and society ladies from Alex's childhood, all sitting together on folding chairs that bridged 2 worlds. When the officiant asked who gave this woman to be married, Arthur said, Her mother and I do, then added, quietly enough that only the front row heard, though I think she gave herself, and we're all better for it. Hope and Judy served as flower girls, throwing petals with such enthusiasm that guests had to duck, filling the ceremony with laughter instead of solemnity. And when Daniel kissed his bride, it tasted like redemption and second chances, and the beautiful possibility of love that grows not from perfection, but from 2 people choosing to see each other clearly and choosing to stay anyway. The reception was held in Arthur's private garden, but the menu was simple. Daniel's soup recipe, grilled cheese sandwiches made Judy's way, and a cake that Alex had insisted on making herself despite the kitchen disasters it might entail. It was perfect in its imperfection, a celebration that honored both worlds while creating something entirely new. As the evening wound down and the last guest departed, 4 generations sat on Arthur's terrace. Arthur holding baby Hope, Daniel and Alex on the garden swing, and Judy curled up between them all, fighting sleep. Daddy, Judy said drowsily, are we a family now? Like a real official family? We've been a family for a while now, sweetheart. Today just made it official. Good, Judy murmured, her eyes drifting closed. I like our family. It's not normal, but it's ours. Alex caught Arthur's eye and saw him smiling, not the practiced smile of public appearances, but something real and warm and grateful. The rain that had brought them all together held off until after midnight, then fell soft and gentle, like a blessing on this unlikely family that had found each other in the storm. Part 30. Years later, when people would ask Alex what made her leave everything behind that October night, she would think of that moment on the bench, pregnant, alone, with nothing left but the choice between despair and hope. She'd chosen hope, not knowing it would lead her to Daniel and Judy and a love that multiplied instead of divided, that grew stronger through sharing instead of weaker. And Daniel, whenever someone asked what made him stop for a stranger in the rain, would think of Rachel's words from years before. Kindness is never wasted, even when it costs you something. Especially then. Sometimes the beautiful stories begin with the simplest choice, to see someone who needs help and decide that their need matters more than your convenience. Sometimes love arrives not in grand gestures, but in offered umbrellas, in cups of tea made without asking, in children who teach grilled cheese techniques, and grandfathers who learn that worth can't be measured in dollars.
Sometimes everything changes because someone chose to stop instead of driving by. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, the person you save ends up saving you right back. The story of Daniel and Alex became the kind that neighbors tell to neighbors. They get shared at community dinners and anniversary celebrations, not because it was extraordinary, but because it was extraordinarily ordinary. A reminder that love often looks like simple kindness, that family can be chosen as well as born, and that sometimes the most important thing you can give someone is the space to remember who they really are. And in Cedar Falls, Iowa, there's still a bench in the park with a plaque that reads, "Sometimes the best things in life begin in the rain." Sometimes on rainy October evenings, you can find Daniel and Alex there with their children, Hope, now old enough to splash in puddles, and Judy, teaching her little sister about the magic of rainy nights and second chances. Because some stories don't end, they just keep growing, like love shared between people brave enough to let themselves be seen and kind enough to see others in return. Have you ever wondered what would happen if you chose kindness when it was inconvenient, if you stopped to help when it would have been easier to keep driving? Sometimes the smallest acts of compassion create the biggest transformations, not just for the person you help, but for yourself. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who needs to remember that hope and healing are always possible. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories that remind us of the extraordinary power of ordinary kindness, because in a world that often feels divided, sometimes the most revolutionary thing you can do is simply care about a stranger's pain and choose to do something about it.